anybody can talk about cloud native or say that they're cloud native or create their own definition of cloud native. What we've done differently is we're actually putting those practices into practice.
For me, what makes CNTi very different and unique is that we really need to lead the journey on the cloud native telco transformation. We need to have the communication service provider and the telecom operators having a common house where they could bring their requirement to talk to the industry, not in a fragmented way.
We have to embrace a future where it's possible to evolve and change, because that's the only way our industry is going to succeed.
I'm Jill Lovato, and this is the Layer 8 Voices of Open Networking podcast. In this series, we'll explore how open source technology is reshaping the networking industry. For years, cloud native has been the goal, but the path forward demanded a new kind of collaboration. In this first episode, we'll uncover the moments, the decisions, and the people that make open source cloud native networking a reality. CNTi began with a simple purpose: to make cloud native telecom achievable for everyone. It's the story of how a shared vision became a movement that's reshaping telecom from the inside out. The Cloud Native Telco Initiative, or CNTi, was formed to accelerate telecom's move to the cloud by aligning service providers, vendors, and open source communities around a shared vision. Kicking off our series, we go back to the start of CNTi, the conversations, obstacles, and decisions that led to its creation. I'm joined by Philippe Ansargot from Orange and Mark Price from Matrix, two of the people who were there from day one. Let's drop into that conversation.
Hello, everyone. I'm here with Philippe Ansargot with Orange and Mark Price with Matrix, who are going to tell us all about the Cloud Native Telco Initiative, its origin story, what it is, how it came to be, why it's important. So before we really dive in, can you both give me a quick overview of your background in the industry?
Philippe, do you want to start?
Yeah, for sure. So, hi everyone. Really pleased to join Jill and Mark for this fireside chat. So, my name is Philippe Ansargot. I'm VP of Software Engineering at Orange. My job in 3 words: technology, strategy, innovation. I'm driving right now the telco to techco transformation at Orange with a very strong emphasis on cloud native telco. I'm chief architect for the connectivity convergence platforming, and I'm also multitasking for the Orange Group CTO in topics like AI, resiliency, and sovereignty. Last but not least, I'm also board member at the Linux Foundation Europe.
And I'm Mark Price. I'm the CTO with Matrix Software, and Matrix is a vendor that produces software in the rating, charging, billing space. We are in the networking space as well as IT, so have a heavy interest in cloud and cloud native in particular, and have been collaborating with a number of folks. So Orange is one of our many customers, but we collaborate with Linux Foundation. We also work across the industry in other standards and communities to try to promote open source and open standards and collaboration in the aspirations for telco.
Yeah, that's great. So we have some diverse perspectives here with Mark, you representing the vendor side, and Philippe coming from a telco operator. That's fantastic. So Mark, why don't we start with you? Can you just give us a little bit of background for folks new to CNTi? What is it and what inspired its creation?
Yeah, that's a great question. CNTi is new, so a lot of people will not have heard of this yet. I think the best way to start to unpack that question is actually to speak a little bit about what cloud native is. It's one of those terms that I think most people have heard and many people use, but not everybody means the same thing by it. So when we speak about cloud native, there is a major movement. It started, arguably, about 10 years ago, almost to the date. Google donated Kubernetes to the Linux Foundation, and it was the origins of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And that was a seminal date. At the time, many of us did not know it was going to be as big as it was. The industry was still very fragmented, and the real problem that has been solved by Kubernetes and the family of open source that it's been promoting is along the lines of what's now described as a cloud native movement. And what that essentially is about is helping to solve a lot of the problems of modern software architecture. The real challenges that many of us as software vendors have and operators have on the basis of maintaining and deploying and managing workloads like software like Matrix is essentially that it's very challenging to do this on an operational basis when workloads are dynamic. It's easy to do so when things aren't changing a lot, but when you have a lot of changes, those changes can be very cumbersome, they can be very expensive, and they can be very difficult to manage. And sometimes those changes are brought on intentionally when you have very dynamic business environments, but sometimes those changes are unintentional when you have things like outages or strange spikes or other things like that, where the behavior of a workload may not perform particularly well. So, what cloud native is really about is actually hardening software and infrastructure to be able to manage dynamic environments and to be able to be more adaptable and to be able to do so at a reasonable cost and at a reasonable speed. It is also the case that there's a desire to move a lot of software to the cloud. And sometimes there's confusion around the fact that, cloud native basically means just moving something to the cloud. That is not necessarily the case. You can have a cloud native application which is designed well that isn't running in the cloud. You also often can have workloads that are running in the cloud that are not cloud native. And that's really the origins of the problem, is if you just start to move a lot of workloads to the cloud, they're not necessarily cloud native and they won't necessarily perform well. So what the Cloud Native Telecom Initiative is about the real challenges that telco has with this sort of environment that we've just described. And telco is even more challenged than most industries to take advantage of cloud native. Cloud native at its outset 10 years ago looked like it was going to be something that was going to take over the world, in particular in the IT space. For smaller or very simple applications, it was obviously the way to go. And telco had a very fragmented ecosystem of complex open source that basically it was not obvious that Kubernetes or any of the family of products that were there were going to be applicable or were going to be more suited than those other sorts of open source families. It's taken a long time. It is clear now that Kubernetes in that family and what we would call cloud native in terms of the CNCF definition of it is the way to go. And so it's really just 1 year ago that CNTi took its current form. And that's really, I think a credit again to the industry that we've recognized that there are special and different things about telco that need to be embraced. And the home for introducing and managing and standardizing and supporting those things is the community that we're now increasingly growing around Linux Foundation networking for the home of CNTi.
Yeah, that's some really good insight. I know, it seems like it would make sense that there would be problems with people in telco or other industries just trying to dump their infrastructure into the cloud and call it cloud native, but that's not really going to work. It's not scalable. It's not interoperable. So yeah, it sounds like open source is definitely the best approach here. So that actually does take us to the Linux Foundation and to LF networking, which CNTi is a project under the LF networking umbrella. Can you tell us a little bit about, how that decision was made? Was there a tipping point? Was there an obvious time when folks were like, this needs to happen, this needs to be part of LFN? Is there some background there you can share?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so to conclude that part of the story, as I mentioned, about a year ago, if I go back in time, actually, over the 10 years again since the incarnation of CNCF, obviously there has been a lot of work in telco, and increasingly it's been recognized that fragmentation that we've had in telco was not sustainable. It was 7 years ago that LF networking was formed, and really the purpose for LFN was to basically reduce fragmentation ultimately. It took a while, though. We had a lot of various different projects inside of LFN. So, over time, if you go back, the last few years, there's been a lot of work both in CNCF, and we've been collaborating in there as well as many vendors and many operators within CNCF as part of subgroups that telco. There's a small fraction of CNCF members that are telco members overall. So it's not a major part of their mission. But again, telco has been very special. And we've been doing a lot of things within CNCF. We've also been doing a lot of things within LFN because, of course, that is as a networking body, that's a home for telco. So there've been sort of parallel initiatives where a lot of work has been done to kind of flesh out from a vendor perspective how to build applications, and from an infrastructure perspective how to standardize infrastructure in ways that operators can take advantage of these things. And of course, from an operator perspective, how best to use these things to take advantage in dynamic environments. And it was 1 year ago, really, the CTO from CNCF, Chris Arpit, the GM for Elephant, myself, and a couple others really got together and said the right thing to do was to take advantage of the time and the movement in the industry. One of the major drivers for this has been that the services and the environment are getting more dynamic. So there is an urgency, and I think we'll hear more of this, from Philippe, from Orange as examples. But there's an urgency to deploy in earnest 5G services, prepare for 6G services, really get ready to do something different with the network and with services than we've done historically. And that urgency and that challenge requires us to lay the ground to do so. So it's the right time to gain that adoption, to have the confidence in vendors, to have the confidence in a lack of fragmentation and actually standardization across both the infrastructure and the software vendors in the space to enable interoperability. So it was July of last year that we all got together, created CNTi. It was almost exactly 9 years to the date after CNCF was formed. And it's been 1 year ago, almost exactly now, since that date that we are now sharing this more widely and really believe that we have some stories and hoping to gain some adoption and momentum because we're excited about the promise of this and recognize the urgency to get this done.
Yeah, that's great. I think I recall the official launch of the project was in the fall of last year, and that was definitely a big moment for the industry, and we were all really happy to see this movement taking place. So, Philippe, we would love to get some perspective from you on the operator side. You've been working, your whole industry has been working to get cloud native for years. So, with CNTi, what are you seeing that's different about this initiative than some other efforts that might be taking place or some other things that tried to get off the ground that never really went anywhere? How is this special, if you will?
Oh, it's a very good question, Jill, here. I would say yes, telecom has been shifting toward cloud native for years. But if we want to be a little bit more accurate, I would say that cloud native is coming mainly on the IT function of the network, like Mark depicted, for instance, with what Matrix is doing. And also in a very particular network domain around the 5G. But honestly, there is not so much cloud native elsewhere. And for me, what makes CNTi very different and unique is that we really need to lead the journey on the cloud native telco transformation. We need to have the communication service provider and the telecom operators having a common house where they could bring their requirement to talk to the industry, not in a fragmented way. So here, if I may wrap up about this very good first question for me, with CNTi, we got 4 big differentiators. The first one is that CNTi is about consolidation, not duplication. We are not reinventing the wheel. We are spotting on what our industry is missing, and we try to do our best. So it's about validation and home for best practices. Second topic that I really love is having our hands dirty. We focus on pragmatical implementation. It's not theory. The third one, and I think it has been already mentioned by Mark, it's really about, I would say, avoiding industry fragmentation that today I think is really killing our industry. And perhaps the last point that I really appreciate is the cross-community collaboration. Because like Mark mentioned, CNTi is a project under the umbrella of the whole Elephant, but we got, I would say, multiple relationship and sharings with other, I would say, peers projects inside Elephant, but it's also about CNCF. It's about also from time to time with other open source of standardization bodies, like, for instance, the NGMN Alliance or the CNTF, the Cloud Native Telco Forum that is initiated by our friend at Swisscom. So here, what is important is that CNTi isn't the first Linux Foundation networking project defining requirement and their testing. but really addressing the consolidation. And here we can perhaps just keep in mind the effort that have been made on Hanuket, for instance, who defines a true reference architecture for cloud and testing them with, for instance, a very important component for us that is funk test. So yes, CNTi is uniquely, I would say, focusing on cloud native, but it's about validation and best practices. And honestly, I think it what makes all the difference, and we clearly need it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's something that's formulated a little bit differently and takes a different, more collaborative approach than some of these other potential solutions to bring all of this stuff together. And so moving on, I think you sort of alluded to this in your previous answer, but can you? And I'd love to hear from both of you on this, but we can start with you, Philippe. What would you say if you had to, clearly summarize what is the problem that this is trying to solve? I heard a little bit about fragmentation, but if you could just kind of make it a little more succinct for us.
Yeah, for sure, Jill. So I'm used to share my thought about cloud native in telco industry as much as I can, because the transformation on cloud native for telco is not driven at the right speed. For me, it's very difficult to onboard or to imagine to onboard the next generation of network function because of the lack of cloud native maturity. I always it first it was a joke, but it's no more a joke. I'm always saying, the C for CNF is not for container, it's for cloud native. So we truly need a different design and paradigm for implementation if we want to grab new properties that will bring new superpower into our network. So yes, definitively, it's about the scaling, the resiliency, the isolation, the self-healing. All those properties won't be live if we do not have a proper cloud native design. So what is important to keep in mind is, we basically move the network function from physical appliance, then to virtual machine, and then to cloud native. And I'm not sure that we truly and widely redesign the function, breaking down the monolith and enabling all the true power that I mentioned in terms of properties earlier on. And here, what is super important also is to stress that as telecom operator, we really struggle to evaluate vendor claims about being cloud native. You can put a sticker on your solution being cloud native, and if you open the hood, it's an overbloated virtual machine just packaged like a container. It's not cloud native. So here, we really need a standardized way to check, verify if a network function is basically truly follow the cloud native principle. And I would say that without objective criteria, I would say operators risk investing in solutions that aren't genuinely cloud native. And for us, it could lead us to a failed transformation. So here, I truly think that our telecom industry is heading, I would say, toward fragmented approaches to cloud native. We may have different interpretation of cloud native best practices. So it can create confusion and incompatibility. So our industry really need vendor neutral best practices, testing framework, and validation programs.
Yeah, Jill,
Yeah.
Jill, if I can add to that, yeah. So this is
Yeah,
the
go for
essential
it.
point, right? Our listeners really, I think, we want to make sure they understand this. So to this point, right, there are still a number of places where cloud native thought leadership occurs, right? And Philippe mentioned a few of them, right? So NGMN is one of those places. NGMN Alliance, Silva is another one of those places, right? Obviously, CNCF is one of those places. What CNTi is doing uniquely for the telecom industry is not just talking about best practices, but actually implementing a test harness that is comprehensive. We're continuing to build upon it. And this is where we need adoption and buy-in from the industry. And we're getting it. because we're collaborating with NGMN Alliance, we're collaborating with Silva, that we're collaborating with CNCF. We have become and are becoming the baseline place to have an empirical set of tests to determine objectively if a workload and infrastructure is cloud native, and we want to continue to build upon that to be able to provide that confidence, as Philippe says, because as I mentioned at the outset, anybody can talk about cloud native or say that they're cloud native or create their own definition of cloud native. What we've done differently is we're actually putting those practices into practice, right? And doing so, if I can mention, across, so that the areas that we cover include things like the configuration. So this is not just about how something works, but how do you actually get it working? How do you manage this? Is this done in the proper way via Helm charts, or are you hard coding things? How easy is this to actually not just implement, but also instrument, use on an ongoing basis? What's life cycle look like, right? So these are things that are not necessarily covered by the software itself, but are things that need to be not just simply described as best practices, but people need to actually own this and step up and do it in standardized ways. We do test the microservices to make sure applications are actually microservices and not just bloated containers. We test the use of state. We test security, observability, reliability, and resilience, right? These are absolutely critical things that are not just kind of checkbox, nice to have things you put on a slide, but they're things that really need to be tested in earnest. And then we test things like installability, upgradability, on ongoing things like that from a lifecycle perspective. So we have what are a maturing set of tests that are born in and of CNCF. And the hyperscalers themselves are involved in this, as well as our vendors, as well as the operators. So it's really exciting to get the involvement from the I'll say the powers behind a lot of this, that are finally recognizing that fragmentation is not going to serve our industry well. And what we need now mostly is awareness and adoption and participation to ensure that we're going to achieve success with this.
Yeah, it sounds like the industry is facing this similar problem to the rest of open source, right? Anybody can call something open source. They can call this cloud native, but when you really look at it, there's so much disappropriation and, lots of things that don't line up and are looking like different science experiments with funny branding. So all of this said, I mean, I think our audience can probably come to some conclusions, but I would love to hear from, and we can start with you, Mark. What business value are you as a vendor seeing from implementing this sort of initiative?
Yeah, I mean, this is really the key question to answer, and of course, this is what Orange is seeking. This is what all of our customers and really what telco is seeking, right? So the holy grail for this is, I would step back and say, for those people that are in the industry of telecom, we recognize that telecom has been reborn a few times. Telecom, wasn't that long ago that networks were designed for voice, were optimized for voice. You could hear a pin drop, right? And that all changed when we redesigned our networks and made them work in an optimized way for video. And now you can massively push a lot of packets through the network very efficiently. And that's also served us well for a number of years. Arguably, the business models have served a lot of participants that are beyond telco as well with those models. But now we're entering a new era, right? And that new era has been born by a lot of the work that's being laid, but we haven't seen that evolution in its fruition yet. We're still in that caterpillar to moth phase, if you will, around that. And that you can call that era lots of different things. It's a lot of it is born in what's described as the 5G into the 6G era, because that ultimately, if you take the hype away from that, what that's about is creating a next generation of capabilities that are laying the framework for how dynamic networks can be more adaptable and thrive under different conditions. And in order to do that, it is absolutely essential that those networks and those business systems that support cloud native paradigms, because these are not one-trick ponies, and these need to be highly adaptable, but also, with that variability, highly resilient, extremely low latent. These are things that are really challenging to do with cloud native. So again, what CNTi is looking for is the business practices to ensure those critical components of networking, which are the low latency, the reliability, and resilience, but doing this with the dynamic need that is being pushed upon us by the business, and being able to do that with the speed and agility that this can be done quickly and economically, because otherwise we're not going to achieve the goals that we need to achieve.
Right. And with AI getting so big and so many just really incredibly fast changes in technology and the way that people consume information, it's so important that the networks are ready to support all of that and to deliver what people are looking for to access that information. So Philippe, do you have similar business value here from the operator side?
I,
You want to
I,
tell us a little
I
bit?
think I think
Yeah.
that I've got complementary one, and I want to be very, very, very pragmatic and straight to the point here. On Orange side, we already mentioned the CNTi test suits in RFPs. We target to write the new must requirement in our RFP based on material coming from CNTi, and that's why we are contributing and here to basically fill the gap. We are already leveraging the Funk test from LFN and Anuket in major RFP. So, evaluating the cloud nativity of CNF in our networks is clearly on our agenda. So, for me, the direct business impact here is threefold. It's about de-risking the procurement process. It's risk mitigation and reduce the vendor lock-in that is killing us. And it's also future-proofing the business by deploying the right solution because we know that they are cloud native.
That's great. That's great. So all of this in mind, everything that we've been talking about, and I know we've touched on this a little bit, but I want to kind of focus a little bit more on back to the open source angle. Would love to hear about how you think CNTi is really leveraging and taking advantage of that open source collaboration to tackle these challenges. What does that look like? Maybe a little more in practice and less in theory.
So
If you want to
I can
start
jump
that
in
one,
if you
Philippe.
want.
Yeah.
I can jump in on this one, Jill.
Yeah.
So for me here, transparency creates alignment. With the way we are working inside CNTi, no black boxes, no proprietary interpretation. We just have trust because we got transparent. It's a community-driven evolution, and it tends to limit the fragmentation. As operators, vendors, developers, everyone can contribute to define the best practices together, and working hand in hand on this is a direct connection, I would say, from the vendor ecosystem toward the operator and CSPs to have direct conversation about the requirement. It's extremely valuable. The third point is it's a built-in remediation that creates for me a learning loop. In the spirit of how CNTi is addressing and managing the validation, it's not just a pass-fail test, but it's okay, it's pass or fail. But at the end of the day, if it's fail, it's how you can fix it. So with CNTi, we got this remediation on fail test to help the application developers. And for me, it's extremely good. It's the feedback loop that need industrial to be sure that they are working on the right topic. And the last one for me is also super important. It's leveraging existing open source tools. Sorry, and Mark has just named a few of them. So first one is Silva. So Silva is a production grade cloud native telco stack aiming at defining the framework, the reference implementation, and the validation center. And the team at CNTi has recently published a new blog post where we are emphasizing the collaboration between Silva and CNTi. I encourage the audience really to read it. In the Silva Validation Center, now we incorporate the CNTi test suite into the toolchain to help verify that the workloads running on Silva compliant stacks meet the cloud native standards. And for me, what is very important here is that this kind of close coordination ensures that test outcomes provide real-world feedback, and it's both, I would say, a good news for communities and for the vendors because it helps refine the tool and the practices. I can also name about the work that is ongoing with the free 5GC. So Silva free 5GC, a lot of connection with other open source tools. So here, what is perhaps the last word for me on this one? I truly think that open source doesn't just enable the collaboration. It makes, in our case, the fragmentation economically irrational, and it's super important. Why should, as a telecom operator, invest in a competing standard when the whole industry is building one together and one in which everyone can shape it from the inside?
Yeah, that's really important. That's super good insight there. So I think let's shift a little bit. Similar question for you, Mark. I know Philippe, you just mentioned some examples of open source organizations working together on this, but can you give me some examples of how CNTi is already working to solve real world problems? Maybe outside of open source groups, how is it being implemented or early deployments?
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I mean, a challenge for a vendor like ourselves, right, that is deeply involved with cloud native and really passionate about it is that, we are a vendor that's part of many vendors when we go into a large environment like an Orange or any of our operators. And in those cases, there may be multiple infrastructure vendors that interpret things differently. That AWS, Microsoft, Azure, Red Hat. These all are different large ones, not to even mention the smaller ones, and they may interpret or define some of the open source differently, right? And then of course we're interworking with many other vendors as well because our solutions, as I mentioned, are things like rating and charging. This is the heart of how do you monetize services, but we plug into many different network functions, and we plug into many different functions to be able to support the business as well. And if all of those are again working differently, or the life cycle works differently, or their upgradability works differently, this is a challenge not just for us, but for it's pain for our customers. So what we're doing is we're gaining adoption, and I think when we're getting the attention of large players, AWS as an example has started collaborating with us, which is huge to have hyperscalers involved with us, right?
Great.
So when we're getting the hyperscalers working with us, when we're getting large vendors working with us, and when we're getting these tests mandated as part of RFP processes, these are really very positive steps for us, because what it means is we need to embrace adoption, and vendors in industries that work well don't lock in their customers. They don't make them hostage. They provide best-in-class differentiation, which you can still do. You can still pass all of these tests and be truly cloud native and still differentiate your solution on the basis of the virtue of the product itself, which is what we believe in. We believe in not holding our customers hostage and enabling them to make the best choices. Those choices are both infrastructure choices and software choices. But we believe that we can provide the best value by basically building functions on top of that. And I think we're beginning to see that opens up a world for the development in those areas that make the best sense and the most sense for our industry. And it doesn't mean that people are afraid of innovations because they don't want to allow their operators to move off of old legacy stacks. We have to embrace a future where it's possible to evolve and change, because that's the only way our industry is going to succeed.
And they don't have to be scared because it's this whole big group effort, and you're seeing this input and testing from all over the industry. So that should give folks a lot more security and validation and what's happening.
That's right.
So, well, this has been great. I know we are running a little short on time. So before we wrap things up, I think it would be great if we could kind of give our listeners some information about how to get involved. What's the next step? and what are we looking to achieve next as a community? Do you want to take this first stab at this one, Philippe?
Yeah, for sure. And Jill, I guess that you may have several personas into our audience. So first, for everyone, I would say start with the basics. Learn first, read blogs, come and participate to the weekly meeting, and try by yourself. It's very simple to see CNF test suite in action. And honestly, it requires only very few commands to be having your hands dirty. Then for vendors, get certified. If you are claiming to be cloud native, prove it. Start the validation process today. It will be your competitive differentiator. For developer and contributors, jump into the source code. This is an open source infrastructure that will power the global networks. Your code could really have a massive impact. For telecom operators, it's about shaping the standards. Your requirement as telecom operators can shape the industry. Engage now while standards being defined, not after they're set. And I would say perhaps the last personas around the community and the community engagement. I would say whether you have 5 hours per day or, 5 hours per week, there is always a way to contribute. You can start small, you can grow your involvement over time. So there is room for everyone here.
Yeah, contact us and get involved. This is not an exclusive club. In fact, this is really an invitation, right? So contact us and get involved. This is the right time to get involved. And we're very excited about growing the group. And there are a lot of different roles, right? You don't have to, if you're an expert, we would love your help. But if you're not an expert in this area, also there's ways to get involved. And what we really need at this point is awareness and adoption. And we're getting it. So that's why we really believe this is the right place and it's the right time to get involved.
Do we need more testers right now?
Always.
Okay. So call to action there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think this has been a really great discussion. It gives us some foundational information about CNTi and what we're doing and what we're hoping to solve. We are potentially going to be doing some more discussions where we take a little bit deeper dives into some other aspects and maybe more into the technical side of CNTi. But thank you everyone for joining us, and we will share some resources and links to get you started. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks for listening to episode 1 of the Layer 8 Voices of Open Networking podcast. This is just the beginning. In a future episode, we'll explore CNTi in action, how it's helping operators and vendors move faster, work together more smoothly, and shape what's next in telecom. Come be a part of this initiative. Check out the CNTi landing page at elfnetworking.org. We'll link the page in the show notes below. Make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. We'll see you next time.